All right, hey guys, I'm back. Last predictions for the 2027 season. Just getting them in before we finish up April, so I feel like that counts. We're going to jump into the Sabathia division. The Sabathia and the Mendoza, in my opinion, easily two best divisions in the VBL. You're going to have some really good teams miss the playoffs, so I'm going to jump in like I did with the other ones. We're going to start with last place, and we're going to just work our way up. All right. All right, so it's probably not a surprise to see Bugaboo as my last place prediction. This team is a cautionary tale for any team that's rebuilding, in my opinion. So you had these deep years of rebuild, right? 67 down to 39 wins. They did not bring in a lot of money. So if you're going to do this and do this, it's going to lead to this, right? Because you're obviously going to be drafting top talent, but by year 4 or 5, you got to pay for them. And if you don't have that money and that budget to really be able to afford that talent when they are hitting that prime and wanting those big contracts, then you're going to have a very small window like Bugaboo did. You know, they were an excellent team. 99 wins, 99, 91, 90, 93. Excellent years. But they started to get to a point where they couldn't afford their talent anymore. And that's why this rebuild has started up again. So now we're going to have to see, like, do they have the right idea to not only rebuild, but rebuild for long-term success? So this team's not trying to fool anybody this year. They are in that deep rebuild, maybe trying to get some value out of some of these players, but yeah, they're not going to be able. They're going to struggle to compete with most teams in the AL. But in this division, they're just going to get beat up. Pat Hill, not a bad player, over 500 slug. He's good for basically over 30 home runs. Jimenez, another really good player, but right field, left field, not great at defense. Having a bat there, that's not going to propel you to much. And then first base, Joe Young. So the interesting thing about this team is they're pretty strong where most teams are strong. They've got the bat here, and then they just start to decline. The middle, I just noticed Pete Alonso is a second baseman. That's funny. When did that happen? I don't think he's a second baseman. So, it's going to be a strong. I don't know why he's listed as second base. He doesn't even have a defensive rating there. He certainly doesn't have the range to play it. But, this team is just they're going to get beat up. I like Marty King. He's kind of like that scrappy player, the player that's just not really good enough to be on most, but he's going to excel on a team like Bugaboo. They got him from Cooperstown last year. But, like I said, they're going to strike out a ton. They're not going to put the ball in play a ton. They'll hit for some power though. So if you give them that, if you open that door, they're going to beat you with the home run ball. Defensively, they're average at best. Still, I don't really understand that. I'll have to ask management about that. But anyway, on the pitching staff, nothing really to write home about here. Ben Parks being their top starting pitcher. He's good enough to be like a 4 or 5 on a good team. So being a number 1 on this team, the other number 1s are just going to eat him alive, and some of the offenses are going to do the same. So really, there's not much here, and I don't think they're trying to have a lot here. I don't really do these sorting by potential, but I don't think you have to. There's not a lot here, and you can see they're a pretty old team too, especially by VBL standards. So I've got Bugaboo's over-under at 45.5. All right, let's go next up. I've got next up the Corpus Christi Honey Butter Chicken Biscuits. What a name. Rebuilding team, I should say, expansion team. They've done okay in their efforts. They haven't, again, I don't think they're trying to really get to that top 3 yet. They've been pesky. A lot of the top teams for whatever reason, have really hated playing this team. This team just seems to fight and scrap for every win. They on offense, again, kind of like Bugaboo. They're not trying to fool anybody here. They're not trying to have. They don't have a bunch of superstars. They're just not that good. They're fine, for like that lower echelon team. You got Raymond Knox being their best overall player, but they just don't. They don't do a lot on offense. If I'm being honest, there's just not a lot there. There's some decent speed. There's definitely some good defense, which I think kind of plays a role in how they battle teams, but there's just not a lot of power. I mean, look at that. When you have that's rare in the VBL too. When you have one guy in the entire lineup with an over 60 power, you're going to have a tough time. So the only way this team, and also actually I should point this out, they don't walk a lot. So, this team is they're going to scrap and claw and they're going to fight, but they don't have the firepower to keep pace. Pitching staff, again, there's not a lot here. Ed Morton is a decent pitcher, but again, as a number one, he just doesn't compete. He's only 24 years old, but I just don't. Again, good pitcher, just not an ace, not even probably a number 3, to be honest with you. Bullpen wise, they're going to close things out if they ever get to that point with Chet Roberts. He's not very good. They just don't have a lot of talent, to be honest with you. But they're focused on their farm system, as well they should be. I think they seem to have figured out what they're trying to do within the farm. So I think that this team is going to be in the mix within, call it 2 to 3 years. But right now they're just trying to get by, collect the draft pick, make teams that they play lives miserable, and see where they end up. And I've got them at 70.5 as their over-under. All right. Next up is the Oklahoma City Cyclones. This is a team that, the division kind of passed them by recently. They had this stretch here from 2012 through 2018 where they were very competitive on and off with the playoffs. If we had 3 seeds at the time, they would have been a playoff team for most of that. I think right here is when this is the last year of no 3 seed making the playoffs. So, they would have had 2 other playoff appearances, and then with those 4 seeds, who knows what would have inspired them to make some trades to get to that point. They make money, so they've got a good plan there. I think the biggest thing here is really just not figuring out the right talent to compete in this division. Yelich is, an offensive superstar. He's very good on defense too. He had that down year in 2025, but last year he bounced back really nicely with a 3.8 WAR. He strikes out a ton, which, when you're hitting 30 plus home runs, I guess that's all right. But after him, there's a drop off in talent that is not something that this team's going to be able to escape. The other thing is they're kind of old. For VBL standards to have the majority of your lineup being over, 29 or over, that's pretty rare for this league, and it's tough to win like that. They did sign, Stanley Price, who had that horrible injury in the offseason last year, so he took the entire year off in 2026. He was a 5 WAR player. If he can get back to 3.5, 4 WAR, he's a nice pickup for Oklahoma City. But one thing that I recently pointed out was, on defense, they aren't performing very well on defense. And so, their defensive rating here is not awful, but you kind of look at, in center field. So Rodriguez being their center fielder, he's a better left fielder than center field, but he's not the best center fielder. And the reason why I point that out is I was looking at their pitching staff, and if you look at them really quick, you look at guys like Innie, right? So Actually, let me go back to good profile. Nothing wrong here. But what I noticed about this team was, oh, here we go. Opponents are hitting 336 against him when they put the ball in play. Granted, it was only 15 games, small sample size, but that kind of narrative keeps happening to this team. So you look at Dodson, 351. I think it was it Johnson? No, it wasn't Christian Johnson. I think it was Jimenez. Jimenez, good profile here. Nothing wrong with having that kind of pitcher. Look at these opponent batting average. I mean, they're just getting beat up by the ball in play. And I think that speaks to the defense, and the defense is just not doing these guys any favors. Talent-wise, I think that they're not trying to do a ton with the middle of the bullpen. So here, this is where they're probably going to lose a lot of games right here with Roberts, Alvarez, Giles, and Spears. They do have, profile-wise, solid closer in Scotty. He had a good year, not great. He's not he's not an automatic shutdown, but 1.5 WAR. He is gonna give the Cyclones a lot of wins in those late innings. But I think this is a team that just the pitching staff, the lineup, it's average. And in this division, average gets you pretty low in the standings. And until they can find ways to really compete with those top teams, this is where they're going to be for now. So I've got Oklahoma City at a 72.5 over under. All right, so similar to the Mendoza division. I think at this point you're going to start to have really good teams missing the playoffs. I look at even Oklahoma City. I don't think 72 wins I don't think they're as bad as that sounds. I just think that the division, when you play them mostly, it's just going to chew them up. So next up in my predictions is the St. Louis Knights. This is one of those franchises, they've never won the championship, but they had this really good playoff stretch here. And then they've been kind of struggling to make the playoffs the last few years. 80-plus wins the last 3 years. There was a moment, I think it was 2 years ago now, where they were dominating the division and then just really took a nosedive. They bring in a lot of money. This team isn't in any trouble. It's just whether or not they can find the talent to compete with those top teams. Lineup is good. Again, I look at them as just good enough. I look at Christensen. He's got a great profile, great hitter, 5+ WAR talent. He's the superstar that kind of drives the bus here in St. Louis. Contreras is a really exceptional catcher. Defensively, top notch. 2.8 WAR last year in 100 games. It'll be interesting to see how he does in a full season. Alvarez, again, good enough center fielder, but great outfield ratings. He just doesn't have as much experience there, it looks like. 3.2 WAR last year. These are just players. They all kind of complement each other. I think I mentioned in the other video, I lost my notes for the last 2 divisions, so it is what it is. This team can steal, but they don't have a ton of speed. So that's kind of interesting. And then defensively, they've got, you start from Patterson on down. Things get very average here when you get to this point. The only good thing is you're talking about first base, corner outfield, and so on and so forth. So second base, you probably want a better defender there at second base. Mark Jackson probably is going to need some sort of upgrade, to be honest with you. But I think that this lineup's good. I don't think that they are the best lineup in the division, but I think that they are good enough to really battle it out. On the pitching staff, Enriquez is another guy, kind of like Huerta, where health has just not been. I thought it was. Oh no! You know what? I just totally made that up. I don't know why. I always thought that he was getting hurt, but I guess he's just flown under the radar. He's given him 30 starts, 6 WAR. He's good for basically 6 WAR every year. I don't know who I was thinking of that I thought he got hurt a ton, but we move on. But After him, you have Bruce Parker, who, again, 4.5 WAR. He's been really good for the last 2 years. Can he be that strong number 2? It looks like it. And then you go to Jefferson. Jefferson was a 2.5 WAR pitcher last year. I'd like to see something a little bit better in the 3 spot for this division, because I think you're up against some really elite starters, and then you've got Ingram here, who he pitched out of the bullpen last year, so we have to see how he's going to do. This type of performance is not going to hack it in this division, so that's going to be something to look for. Stanley High had a really good career with Bugaboo, and then he's kind of he hasn't been as consistent since, but I think he's better than that performance last year, and I think we're just going to have to see. I don't think he's worth that money, but he's a good pitcher. So rotation is good, not great towards the end, but definitely good enough. Bullpen, you've got Ruiz, who's a very good closer. He put up really good numbers last year, 35 saves, 1.5 WAR. No real problems there. The problem is mostly like that middle relief. Again, like a lot of teams, it's just what's going to happen here that's going to get the ball to Ruiz. And I think ultimately this team's probably going to lose a lot of close games. They're going to be in the division race for a long time. This is the kind of team that with a trade or two, or some prospects coming up through the farm, if they have any that are ready, they could be right in the mix. A hot start always helps, but overall, I've got them at 85.5 wins as an over-under. Again, I think that this team probably, if I put them in, let's just say like the Helton division, I think that they're probably like a stronger 4th place team maybe, but in this division, I'm not sure that they're going to be able to hang with the rest. All right. So just out of the playoffs, which, I mean, this division's insane that I'm at this point that I'm putting this team out of the playoffs, but the Winnipeg Goldeyes. Winnipeg's really an interesting team for me because they seem to recycle their roster a little bit on and off. They have been really good, though. They had those 2 championships. Last year, they won 99 games, finished in 2nd place. This is the kind of team that, again, I think we talked about Cooperstown and Savannah. This is a team that knows who they are. They know who they're going for. They have the core of their team is 25 years old in Richard Hall, Lawrence Connolly, Al Hammond, and then you've got Carlos Hernandez here. 4 guys really good. Veteran in Donaldson, who still has not really slowed down. Granted, he's not been like a monster at the plate, but he's been that guy for Winnipeg for the last few years here, as you can see, since they got him from Death Valley. Good player. They just, where I think that they're a little bit weak on offense. Let me see, where did I put? Yeah, so they are not a team that's going to walk a ton. So as you can see here, the eye is definitely a struggle for them. And then you look at the contact of those guys with the low eyes, 48, 53, 61. It's going to be a little bit of a struggle against some of the better pitchers in this division. But, I'm talking about them like they're a bad offense. They're not. They're going to be like top 5, top 6 offense in this in the AL for sure. Pitching, I don't love the pitching, but I am really intrigued to see how he does here. So, again, he's a really interesting acquisition for Winnipeg. I don't remember what the full details were of that trade. Let's see if we can. Oh, that was the 222. Oh, that was the Fortacci and Morgan Lay, which we did talk about. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting because they need him to be the number 1 guy, right? And he hasn't shown that he can be. He's shown that he's a good enough pitcher, but can this profile play to be the ace that they need? We got to wait and see. Moreno Moreno has had a good career. I thought he was going to be better than what he's been, to be honest with you. I thought he was going to be like that 7-WAR type pitcher. But again, this profile plays really well. No problems here. So you're 1-2, really strong. Then we get a little tough here. Alfredo Gonzalez, he's decent. Jose Gonzalez, the potential's there, but I think it's mostly based on the stuff. This movement and control is a little rough for the starting staff, especially in this division. Chris Martin, though, he's been another guy that you look at the profile and you're like, how come he's not dominating? But he's a good enough closer. He's not great. And these are the little things, though, that I think that keep teams out of the playoffs in really strong divisions. You look at even who we talked about in the last team, right? Like, they have some strong players where Winnipeg is weak. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth between the top 5 teams, I think. And it could come down to luck. But ultimately, I just didn't think that this team has the balance and the depth to be top 3. One thing that I didn't note, their stuff is really good. So they're a team that thrives on the strikeout, right? But then you look at, they're going to get beat up in the movement, and they definitely sacrificed control for stuff. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's a very good team. I wouldn't be surprised if they made the playoffs. I just don't have them in because I've got their over-under at 92.5 wins. All right. Next up is our first playoff team of the division. And that's the Echo Park Lakers. All right, so Lakers were a team that were in that rebuild mode. This is kind of their moment, right? Last year, 97 wins, finished in 3rd place. That's how good this division is. Year prior, 86 wins, and I got them in 4th place. They're kind of in that moment where they gotta win in this window. They've had some struggles in the money department, but I think now have sort of figured it out. But looking at the lineup, they're really good. Cabrera, Correa, Townsend. Rivera is really good. He's just a little bit better on defense than his bat has shown. Guzman, good catcher. Harrison, good at second base. Melvin Morris, for a 3-star player, not too shabby. This is just a good team. Look at that. I mean, that speed and that defense. They're just a good team. They complement each other really well. They're not huge in the power department. Yeah, these guys are really good from 77 down to 62, but you're only seeing that one like game-changing power in Townsend. They are a team that will not walk a lot. So got low eyes here. And then on defense, they're not great if they have any defensive replacements. But in terms of, for the most part, you got Morris, Correa, Perry, Rivera, Guzman, Cabrera. Good defenders, going to help out the pitching. And then the other weakness that I wasn't a big fan of was, like Perry having a 50 contact. Morris, again, we talked about before, 48. Guzman, that contact's really bad. So you're going to see like a player like this, he's either going to hit for 261 or he's going to hit for like 190. But I think that this lineup is really good. I think that, yes, they could use some upgrades here and there, but I think that it's really strong. Pitching is led by this guy. I'm sure you've heard of him, Bill Gill. He is locked in till 2036. He's only 25. He, he loses a lot of games because of his personality. We're not sure, but when you have your number one guy is an 8-WAR, 7-WAR guy, you're all set. After him, though, this is where things are going to get interesting, and this is where the teams like Winnipeg and St. Louis could maybe overtake. Villarreal, these are guys that were relievers, right? So Mike King was a reliever last year and the year before. Good relievers, but now we're going to see, is that changeup at 48, potential of 90, is that strong enough for him to be a good borderline great starting pitcher, right? You need him to be really good at number 2. Villarreal, 74 appearances last year, 59 the year before. He's giving you 1.5 WAR. Good pitcher, but can he be a very good starting pitcher? Walton James has the stuff, doesn't have the movement, doesn't have the control, but he managed to put off, a nice season last year. So if you're gonna take on Echo Park, take your chances with Bill Gill, but this is where you're trying to make the difference, right? You're trying to beat those starting pitchers. The pitching's just it's not great, and it's good enough, but it's not great. And I think that I think this is the weakness, that if you're like Winnipeg and St. Louis, you're like, okay, if I can have an offense that can beat these guys, then that's how I drop Echo Park down. This is also why I can't put Echo Park ahead of the top 2 teams, because I just don't think the pitching is there to really compete. So with that said, though, I've got them at 93 and a half wins. So right there with Winnipeg. All right. So second place, I've got the Kansas City Scouts. Kansas City Scouts have been one of VBL's best franchises for a long time. Since 2014, they have won the division each of the last 4 seasons. They won the championship in 2024 after all of these missed opportunities. I mean, they're a really good team. Spoiler alert, if this team wins the division, no way should be shocked. But they're, Noel England, excellent. Steve Roberts, really good. Just acquired him after the season last year, so we're going to have to see how he does. But he's, 5.5 WAR, Gold Glove caliber. Mark Knight, Batman, really good player, has been one of Kansas City's probably most favorite players for the last few years. His nickname's Ripper in this. I thought we'd call him Batman. We might have to change that. Dan Rice in his prime, but again, really good player. This team is just one of those teams that kind of has the right formula to work with everybody. They honestly don't have a lot of like superstar bats. You look at Echo Park and you've got, Correa. This team doesn't really have a Correa type. Steve Roberts, I guess maybe could be that guy, but he hasn't really been that guy for a while. He actually, I guess technically by his standards, had a down year last year. So we're going to have to see if he can bounce back. But they've only got him for, does he have an opt-out? No, they've got him for the next 3 seasons at big money. So when you're getting $3 million, you better put up like a 6 WAR season for a championship contender. But overall, I don't see a lot of problems here. I see just a lot of really good players. I see not a lot of game-changing talent. I guess England could be another one. He drove in over 100 runs, but I just don't look at, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't look at these guys as like upper echelons anymore. But with everybody surrounding them, they're really good. Rotation, again, they don't have that prototypical ace, but Connolly has worked really well for them since acquiring him. He's going to give them 4 WAR. They can pen that in. Garrett Cole has been really good now that he's gotten a chance to be that starter for the last 2 years, but he's like a 3 WAR talent, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you're talking about one of, if not the best division in the VBL, and these are your top 2 guys. So Clifton Jackson had a really nice year last year, but he was in the bullpen for a little bit. I don't know if it was all of it. Yeah, he kind of split time there. Anthony Hunt, another really good pitcher. He's 34 years old, though. And then you look at the bullpen. Bullpen is really good. I think Jose Daniels actually pitched way better than his ERA showed. Yeah, his opponents were hitting 344 on batted balls. He's a very nice addition for this team. But the bullpen's just really good. They've got a bunch of guys that they trust as stoppers. And that's kind of where this team beats you, is these guys keep them in. The lineup just keeps beating you down, just, getting run after run. but then that bullpen just doesn't let you come back into a game. And I think that that's why this team is going to be in the mix for the entire year. I wouldn't be surprised if they win the division, but I've got them at 98.5 wins. All right. That takes us to my division winner. He's going to love this. I'm going with the Southside Enforcers. I'm going with them to come back. Another franchise that had a lot of success early. They It's ridiculous. They won 95 games last year and finished in 4th place. Congrats. But this team's ready now. The core is ready. They are an excellent team. Eric Blue is a very good catcher. James Wilkins is one of VBL's best players. 7 WAR, 6 WAR, 6.5. He's awesome. Dennis Simpson has been really great. He had an excellent year last year. Look at that profile. Lots of blue, which is what you'll love to see. I do love this, by the way. Speed 1, but 96 stealing. That's awesome. 3.5, 3.7 WAR last year. Excellent first baseman. Juan Soto, who I know management sometimes gets frustrated with. He had a down year last year at the plate, but I believe he started really slow and then caught on. So, look for Soto to, if he can start the season off really strong, he might actually be in that MVP conversation early on. But, they put the ball in play a ton. They have good power. They don't have a ton of speed. They've got these guys right here. They can steal, but they don't have a ton of speed. And defense is pretty good. In the pitching department, Jose Torres is the number 1. Jose Torres is a very good-looking pitcher who didn't perform like an ace last year, but 3.2 WAR as a rookie, not a bad place to be. This profile is great. You can pitch him against the Bill Gill and have hope that you're going to win. Jesus Bravo, another great profile. I would pitch him against a Bill Gill and feel pretty good too. And as a rookie, 4 WAR, top 2, that's so good. And that's such a good place to be. You're so confident that you can throw those guys and your offense is going to do its job. Jerry Burrell, again, blue, right? Just really good pitching staff. In the bullpen, Murchison, he's been that guy that, he looked like he was going to be better than he is, but last year wasn't that impressive. 4 ERA, 0.6 WAR. I think maybe now that he's in that closer role, maybe he can have a better year. Again, that was just his rookie year, so I thought he'd be better than that, but maybe this control is kind of hurting him. 4.3 walks per 9 is not very good. But if this team loses games, these guys are going to do it. When these guys win games, it's going to be these guys and all of these guys. And I think that there's enough here and enough in the lineup to really offset the negative aspect of the bullpen. And the bullpen's not bad. It's just not nearly as good. And that's going to be the opportunity for the opponents. So overall, though, great team. I'd be shocked if they don't make the playoffs. And I've got them at 101.5. So there you have it. In the Sabathia division, I've got Echo Park against Kansas City, and then the winner plays Southside. And I hope you enjoyed this, and hope you enjoyed the season. Thanks, guys.